Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest is a television producer turned entrepreneur, and she is the author of the nonfiction book Start Your Second Act: How to Change Careers, Launch a Business, and Create Your Best Life. Her name is Shannon Russell, and my interview with Shannon will follow the note-taking sounds. Shannon Russell, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm so happy to be here with you.
You were formerly a television producer in Los Angeles and New York before you became an entrepreneur. What was your work as a TV producer like, and why did you switch careers to become an entrepreneur?
It was my dream job, to be honest with you. I had wanted to work in television since I was a little girl. I absolutely loved it. It was a lot of long hours and travel. And once I became a mom, I realized that it was a little hard to balance both because I was traveling and I was missing first birthdays and Halloweens and all of that good stuff. And that is what started me thinking about what else I could do and how I could maybe produce my own life instead of producing television shows. And then that's when I ended up heading into entrepreneurship.
Your business coaching firm, and I understand this was not the first business you founded, but your business coaching firm is called Second Act Success Coaching. What services does Second Act Success provide?
Great question. Yeah, we do basically helping women primarily move from a 9 to 5 job into opening a business. So really giving them the empowerment and the tools to be able to take all of their experience that they've had in their career to open a business of their own so that they have that freedom and flexibility that I was looking for when I went into business for the first time.
You've written a book titled Start Your Second Act: How to Change Careers, Launch a Business, and Create Your Best Life. It's a business/personal development nonfiction book. Without spoiling too much about your book, what is it about?
It's about making that fresh start in your life, starting over in whatever aspect you would like. And so I talk about my career transition from TV into business and coaching. And I talk about the stories of many of my clients, of guests that I've had on my podcast who have reinvented themselves. And I really just try to give the reader the tools and resources that they can use to start thinking about what else they can do and start working towards that goal. So it's a lot of what I teach with my clients and use in my programs, but I wanted it to be more accessible to anyone who reads the book. So I'm really hoping it's a nice inspiration that a lot of people can take a lot away from to be able to start building their own second act.
Now, there are a couple of things that are featured quite prominently in your book, and they're called the Second Act Strategy and the UMAP Assessment. What are the Second Act Strategy and the UMAP Assessment, and how do each of those work?
Well, the strategy itself is something that I teach in my signature program that's called the Second Act Accelerator. And it's basically, to break it down, it is looking at your experience and everything you've done in your life and your career up until this point, really examining what you can use out of that experience to help you build a business or start over, change careers, whatever it might be, and then how you can actually implement and apply that to move along into your second act. So it's really just a kind of a little framework or roadmap I use to help people break things down, to really assess what they've done and appreciate where they've come from and know that those skills are unique and you can use those to start over and build that next act for yourself. And then UMAP is a separate assessment that I'm certified in that I use with clients as well, where you basically take this assessment and it pulls out your personality, your values, your strengths, everything that you enjoy doing. Because sometimes when you start over in your career or in a business, or even when you want to write a book or start in some new adventure, you want to know exactly what you want to do and maybe what you don't want to do, because you can be a little picky at that point in the journey. And so the UMAP really pulls all of this out, and it acts like yet another roadmap for you to use when you're looking for that next act to make sure that you stay on that path that is best for you.
Okay, I'm going to ask a brief follow-up question. The UMAP assess is that completely separate from your book, or was it referenced in your book?
It was referenced in the book, but it is a completely separate assessment that I use. So in the book, I talk about taking different kind of self-assessments to kind of understand more of who you are and where you're coming from to help decide where you're going to. So yeah, it's just a little chapter in my book where I talk about self-assessments.
My next question, uh, what are some reasons why people change careers?
I think a lot of times it's that they've realized that the career they chose maybe in their 20s doesn't necessarily fit a little bit later in their lives, or it just doesn't feel as aligned anymore. And they're looking for something that maybe fits into their schedule a little bit more, fits maybe to their changed interests, or that they just want either more pay, more flexibility, more creativity. So there's a plethora of reasons, but I think it's about someone really turning inward and asking themselves, does this feel right? Am I still happy where I am? And if not, what else can I do? And how can I pivot to find a little bit more fulfillment and happiness in what I do each and every day?
What motivated you to write your book?
I have been a huge reader my entire life, and I wrote for television. I've written, blogs and, content for my current businesses. And so, really, I've always been a writer at heart and always, always dreamed of writing a book. So, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started taking some online writing classes kind of as a hobby and just really got into it. And I thought about writing fiction, but then I started realizing that I can help a lot more people with a nonfiction book that teaches what I teach my clients. So I decided to dive in and write Start Your Second Act to get that out there in the world and help further, I guess, my mission or my message.
You mentioned that you considered writing fiction at one point. What were some ideas you had for a fiction novel?
Ooh, I love this because I plan on writing fiction for my next book. So I am, it sounds silly and it's a unique niche, but I absolutely love holiday books, Christmas books, the Hallmark movies genre. So I love to write a fiction book kind of based in Christmas and kind of in that season. And I also really love young adult. So I love, kind of the high school, college age. So yeah, I think I would write fiction in either of those genres, and I have a ton of ideas.
I'm going to pivot back to start your second act for the next couple of questions. How long did it take you to write Start Your Second Act, and what were the easiest and hardest parts of writing a nonfiction book for you?
Ooh, I like that question. I think about writing it, I think nonfiction is a lot easier to write because it is personal. And it's, at least for me, I was writing about what I teach and what I've lived through with my own experience. So for me, it was easy to reflect on past blogs, on my podcast episodes, and my life to really pull out content to put into the book. And so I found it to be a little bit easier because I had a lot more at the ready to pull from. But when I started writing, I joined an accelerator program that really kept me accountable, I think, to help me write it. And I wrote the first draft in 12 or 13 weeks, I think it was. And then it went through, different coaches and content and copy editors. So I think it was about a little over a year in total from when I started writing it to when it was out into the world.
Is your book Start Your Second Act independently, traditionally, or hybrid published? And what was it like getting your book published?
It is self-published 100%. I knew I wanted to do that for this particular book because I wanted it to get out sooner. And I know that the process going traditionally would take quite a bit longer. And so I decided to self-publish. I did a lot of research and I found a company that specializes in helping independent self-published authors get their books out, especially nonfiction authors. So this company that I worked with was called Book Launchers, and they were fantastic. They basically, it's almost like having a publisher or an agent because they walk you through every step and they give you the coaches and they give you the content and copy editors and someone to design the cover and marketing people. So I really felt like I had my hand held the whole process. And I learned a lot through them, but everything's 100% mine, which is what I wanted.
An interesting fact about you is that you are a Lego Serious Play facilitator. What is doing that like, and what motivated your interest in Legos?
Ooh, well, Aaron, my first business when I left television, I opened a franchise, and that was called Snapology, and it was all about teaching children STEM education, and a big part of that was teaching using Lego bricks. So I became a self-professed expert in Lego because I absolutely love teaching kids, and we would teach Lego robotics and engineering concepts, and through running that business for over 8 years, I got certified in Lego Serious Play. And that allows me to go into businesses and corporations and teach adults using Lego. And it is the most fun I can have at work. I love it so much. And I go around the country just getting hired by these large corporations to come in and do presentations or team building or really solving issues that they have. But it's kind of like a therapy session using Lego bricks. And to see the excitement on adults' faces when they're building is so much fun. And we always say that we can problem solve and get things done in a couple of hours of Lego Serious Play than months and months of meetings. So it's very productive and very positive experience for people. So I love that. That's just one aspect of my business and my speaking that I do.
You are a podcast host yourself. You host the Second Act Success podcast. What can listeners expect from a typical episode of your podcast?
Yes, I love inspiring listeners to start their second act. So that's basically, I'd say, majority of the podcast is me interviewing other people who have made a pivot in their career or have launched their own business so that listeners can hear other stories and relate to them and say, oh, if that person can do it, then I can too. And I also have experts on that are maybe an expert in franchising or in recruiting. And then I do a handful of solo episodes too on different topics that my listeners ask me to chat about. So it's been great. I actually just published my 200th episode today.
Congratulations on 200 podcast episodes.
Thank you.
One final question to finish this interview. What is the best advice you could offer to anyone who is considering a career change when it comes to changing careers?
I say give yourself grace. Know that you can make a change in whatever direction you want, and it doesn't have to cause chaos in your life. I think a lot of people think that by, shaking the status quo, that they're going to cause all of this drama and chaos in their life. And I think there's, at least what I teach, are ways to make that change in a really strategic way where it works for you and your finances and your timeline. So just know that you are able to do it and you have one life to live. So why not make that change and try to get yourself in a place where you'll be happier now rather than have those regrets at the end of the day?
Shannon, thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast. You were an amazing guest to interview.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Aaron. I really enjoyed this.
I'll include links to Shannon's podcast as well as other relevant links in the text description of the episode. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.